Hi friends! Welcome to episode 2, season 2 of Dildos and Dislocations, my tiny corner of the internet where we discuss disability, sexuality, and everything in between. As always, I'm your host, Mama Rai, and let's get into it. So this week I had the absolute pleasure of getting to co-host, guest host on a meetup of Queerly Disabled, which is a group that my little queer sister Claire actually was her brainchild, and it was all dating and disability themed. And one of the themes that continually came up was dating apps as someone with a disability. And as someone who has met many partners via the internet and started her dating app journey in 2013 on a computer, on the OkCupid, before there were smartphones and apps, or before I had the money for a smartphone. I have some thoughts. Okay, so first a little background on me and my experience with dating apps, because in the group it was really cool because we had a lot of different perspectives, but y'all are here listening to me, so you get mine, which luckily for you is incredibly varied. Okay, so when I first jumped on dating apps, like I said, back in 2013, so I was a bit of a serial monogamous from like age 15 to 21. I think I was single for all of 2 weeks. So when I got out of that bubble and I was out of college, had moved back home with my parents and was trying to meet people, it was difficult. So I jumped on something called OkCupid. It might still exist, I don't know, because when I did it, it was on the computer. It was a website that you went to. And back then, my disability, I was diagnosed, but there were no visible tells. Unless you knew me pretty well and I'd opened up to you, you wouldn't know that I had a disability. So dating apps were easy then. I mean, not easy, dating apps suck, no matter what. But that period I had no issues. I didn't have any parts of my disability that I needed to disclose until that person actually met me. Fast forward several years, I was back on dating apps after a divorce, and suddenly I'm now on dating apps as somebody who is a wheelchair user, who is very visibly disabled in photos that include my mobility aid. And that was interesting because it took me a little time to figure out when I would disclose my disability. Now, lots of people have lots of different feelings about this, and lots of people do this lots of different ways. And something to remind you, there is no right or wrong way to disclose your disability through dating apps. This week in Queerly Disabled, when we were discussing this, a lot of people had said that they kind of, like their very first photo, it might be a close-up of just their face. And you kind of have to scroll to get to a wheelchair or mobility aid or whatever part of them shows their disability, Totally cool. Love this. Absolutely love this. Had a little flashback when somebody shared this, because when I was on dating apps, a little bit before I was in a wheelchair, I don't even know if I was using a cane at that point. I remember I was on Tinder for the first time, and I'm looking through it, and I swiped on this really cute guy, and we had great conversations, and we met up for a first date, and it was amazing. And so it wasn't until way after I decided to go on the date with him, like to the point of it, I didn't realize it until he was getting out of his car that he was a wheelchair user. And it didn't change my thinking at all. At that point in my life, I was a nurse, and I was like, this is a really hot guy, and he's in a wheelchair. At the time I was not. Cool, whatever. But something that was brought up several times in the meetup was that, you know, biases, unfortunately, at this point in time in society are a thing. As people who are born with disabilities or go through school with the disabilities, especially in the 90s and early 2000s when I was in school, we were completely separated. I didn't see a wheelchair user in the wild until I was in my 20s. Now, again, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I know this is not a normal experience, but it's also not uncommon. I live in San Diego. You're like 2 million residents. Do you know how like excited I get when I see another wheelchair user on the street and how like seldom this occurs? Like this is still a thing. Generalized society, unfortunately, because we were separated at such a young age, they have no idea how to interact with people with a disability, how to bring up conversations with someone with a disability, let alone date them and swipe on a dating app. Again, this is not everyone, obviously. There are lots of people out there who don't give a shit at all about disability. But when you're, you know, in your early 20s and you're dating and you're swiping, like, but for the people in the group that had brought this to my attention, were a lot of people who were disabled at a young age or born disabled. And they had learned that if that first photo that people saw showcased your disability, they would often get swiped over just because of that built-in prejudice. And something to remember is that doesn't necessarily mean that the people who are swiping because they see a wheelchair are bad people. This alone does not make them a bad person. Because, like I said, we have been so conditioned to be separated from disability from a very early age, and then to kind of grow up, and unless it was somehow directly involved in your experience, we only ever see it in aging. So we see it as, oh, this is somebody that I'm going to have to take care of, and I just don't know if I'm that person, because, you know, the person thinking this, I have no concept of what caregiving looks like. I have no concept of disability. So all anyone's thinking is the worst case scenario. And so that's why I, as a disabled person, if I was on dating apps, yeah, my wheelchair would be my first freaking page. I'd probably have Colleen like hot shit out on it too. But that's not everybody, and that's perfectly fine. Many of you know that I have a colostomy bag. Her name is Colleen. But I got asked a lot, like, okay, Rye, when you were dating, when did you reveal Colleen? How did you go about that aspect of disability? Because my wheelchair is one thing. Like, I enter a room, you're gonna see it. There's nothing I can do about that. If I stand and I walk, you're going to see my limp. You're going to see my instability. There's nothing I can do about that. In my colostomy bag, I can hide. Now, I've been with my current partner since before my surgery. He was with me through my colostomy surgery, through all of that. So I have not ever had to enter a dating space with my colostomy bag. So talking to this group at Queerly Disabled was really cool for me, because I got to think through that. What would I do? What would I do? And because I've had a lot of disabled friends over the years, I've gotten asked, like, you know, when do you tell them that you cath? When do you tell them that you do a bowel program? When do you tell? When they have to know. If I was on a date with a otherwise seemingly able-bodied person, but they had IBS or tummy issues or, you know, whatever, when would you find that out? You know, like, obviously I'm not going to hide my colostomy bag. I usually am wearing a bright ass cover. It draws complete attention to it. We're going to talk about it. But for anyone else in the universe that has some sort of bowel or bladder augmentation in any kind of way, or any kind of, you know, alternative from the normal just taking shit, they don't need to know that on date one unless you want them to. This is not something that I need to have displayed on my dating app. They don't need to know how I take a shit until that's going to be, you know, until they're going to be in my inner circle. They're going to be in my home. They're going to see me naked. Like, I don't have to disclose that I poop differently from someone on the first date. And I think that a lot of people with disabilities entering the dating world, especially virtually, which with disability, a lot of times that's the way that we have to meet people, because it's hard to leave the house, right? It's hard to meet up for dates. And I think a lot of people get caught up on, okay, I'm not going to disclose. I'm just going to show the able-bodied parts of myself, and then, you know, we'll figure the rest later. Like, no, I'm not going to not just tell somebody I'm a wheelchair user and then show up to the first date and be like, hey, surprise, sucker! Like, my wheelchair is such a huge part of me. It is how I move around in this world. I'm so proud of her and or him. I've never asked you your pronouns. I'm sorry. That's one thing. Showing or trying to hide how you get through the world when it's such a huge part of you on a dating app, like, no. And if somebody's going to see my wheelchair and they're going to swipe because that's just too much for them, bye-bye. We repeated this very often. And I have said this many times over the years. My disability is the greatest litmus test when it comes to meeting new people, whether that's dating or friends, because it becomes very quickly apparent if somebody cannot do the disability thing. And I would rather know that sooner rather than later. Like, listen, my disability may not be progressive, but it is degenerative. This shit is not going to get better. So if you're meeting me now at this stage of my disability and this is too much for you, see yourself out, because I'm not going to waste the time with that. Something that I hear time and time and time again, and kind of what is echoed through doing these talks and meeting people with disabilities and talking about dating and talking about sexuality. So many of us are so accustomed to having to make ourselves smaller to fit into the world, right? The most of the world is not accessible for anyone, but wheelchair users, mobility aid users, disabled people in general. It's just not. And so we are so used to putting ourselves into this box to seem more palatable, to seem, you know, easier to deal with. And when it comes to dating and when it comes to sex, I need you to take that fucking box and I need you to chuck it out of the nearest goddamn window, because we're not doing that. In this spot specifically, it takes practice. It takes getting to know yourself. But the more confidence and the more love that you have for your body, and the more, you know, you repeat to yourself, like, my access needs are not a problem. My access needs are my access needs. If my partner had IBS, they'd have access needs too. Listen, like, it's not as big of a deal as our brains want to make it seem. And so if you enter that dating space, like, this is my body, this is how I come, it's not a big deal. Like, yeah, we have to do a few things differently, cool, whatever. We should have conversations before getting intimate, no matter your ability levels. Anyway, that's a whole other episode. But it's really not as big of a deal as we think it is. And the right people will know that and see that. And so we get to kind of have that litmus test, like I say, so early on. And it's honestly a gift. It's honestly pretty fucking great, if you ask me. And becoming more disabled has given me such more respect for what my body is capable of. And I'm just so proud of what I've been able to do with this body, that if I'm going to invite someone into my safe space and invite them into my body, if they're not okay with its twists and turns and scars and differences, they can fuck the hell right on off, okay? We don't deal with that. There are so many incredible people out there. Let them pass you by. It's so hard the first time that kind of negativity comes into your life, when you do get that person that's like, nah, you're too disabled. Nah, I don't fuck with wheelchair users. And don't you guys think that it's just able-bodied people too. I will never forget the time that I had a bag for somebody and they were also in a wheelchair and they said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I don't do 2 wheelchair relationships. I only do 1 wheelchair relationship. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the person sucks, they suck, you know? And that's just something that comes with age. It comes with being more involved in the community and having people who have gone through this before you to kind of hear these stories and be like, oh, wow, I'm really not alone. Because you're not. I needed all of the things that I'm telling you guys, and that is why this series came to me, because I did not have a Mama Rai or a Claire or my community to tell me, like, this is normal, this is okay, this is dating, and your body's a little different, and that is perfectly normal and fine. And you might not feel confident now, and every single fucked up, stupid message might send you on a complete spiral, but it won't be like that forever. It gets better. So much better. Tune in for the next episode of Dildos and Dislocations, where, you know, we might just have to take things up a notch and talk a bit about what happens after you swipe right on someone with a disability. As always, this is Mama Rai. Thanks for tuning in. Signing off.